Hello, I'm Otto Nemsadze. I'm co-founder of Tbilisi Architecture Biennial. Welcome back to our another live stream where we are going to present another digital project. Thank you all for joining us in this evening or this morning or this afternoon. It depends from where you connect to us. This evening in Georgia, we're gonna present another winner of the open call to this architecture biennial. The project name with the name Network at Home, and today we have guest from the Center for Spatial Technologies, director of this company, Maxim Rukmanenko. The Center for Spatial Technologies consists of groups of architects, researchers, and educators who develop solutions for spatial problems, hacking economic, technological, and political infrastructures to shape the future city. This is how they introduced themselves to us. And what we are going to do today is to hear from Maxim the presentation of the project, the outline of the project, and later on we will go into discussion and answer your questions, if any. You can post the questions on our Facebook, on our YouTube, and also on our Instagram, and I'll be following them up with our speaker. Maxim, thank you very much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you today. Thank you for taking the time, first of all, for getting interested into this architecture biennial, and then for this opportunity to collaborate. We are really happy to host you today. Unfortunately, with this virtual platform, nowadays it's really difficult to meet in physical space or in physically. But hopefully, in years to come, we'll have this opportunity to present your project even physically in Tbilisi. As said, now we will give floor to you for your presentation, and later on we engage in discussion.
Yeah, that sounds good. And also big thank for your organization and for having us as a participant. I indeed represent the team of the Center for Spatial Technologies. We are at spatialtech.info on most of the social media. And we are this kind of weirder architecture design practice. We do many different projects, including some of the architectural projects that here you can see the competition that we originally won for new standards for housing design in Moscow. But mostly we don't do architecture projects, and we definitely try to not do one client, one custom object projects. We often work with things that are at scale and that kind of try to analyze some of the most acute societal issues. For instance, this is a project that we did jointly with Dark Matter Labs, and it's kind of an analysis of an impact of Highline on the property prices in Manhattan. Again, like following with some proposals around how public investment can be done in a way that doesn't hurt local communities. I'll say a few words about the practice, and again, like the project that I will show is done collectively with an amazing team. We're based here in Kiev, and the kind of nature of our practice is this kind of hacker culture place where we just gather and do things that we consider important. And yeah, basically the project started from me talking to a couple of friends at Climate Kick, which is this kind of big European Union to do with sustainability. And I was kind of pitching the project that another project that I work on, which is called Domo, which is has to do with domestic space again, but in a way that kind of focuses on collective ownership. And in the end of the conversation, we kind of got to the point where we kind of formulated the brief for our next little project, which was because for Domo project, we study how can we renovate existing apartments and turn them into this kind of collectively shared asset. We kind of formulated this idea that it would be interesting to understand the carbon footprint of those processes of renovation. And exactly at the time with Doma project, we purchased an apartment in Kiev, which is also the place where I currently speak to you from, and it's also our office. And we also at that same time found this protocol called EC3. It's a tool that allows you to understand volumes of objects and kind of figure out how much space they take and what is their kind of carbon footprint. So what we did was we very diligently documented everything that had to do with the kind of construction project. Here you can see the huge stack of receipts that we've collected in the process of the renovation. And we've made this kind of giant database with basically everything that we've bought for renovation process. And also we kind of tried later to model in things that we were taking away. So some of these things are actually in the installation that you will see in the end. We stored them and we kind of course, assigned each of them a unique address, as you do in the kind of properly technological way of making a kind of model that is referencing real things. And this is the floor plan of the place as it was, even architecturally interesting because it's a standard Stalinist building with 2 rooms, done for a family, done with a kind of Soviet family in mind. We completely changed the floor plan to the point where there is a clear living room space, which we use as an office, which is completely possible to lock off the kind of my own little crib and have it as a kind of public space for work and events. And then a very small bedroom. So again, I'm just showing this to show that everything that we've done with this apartment was very carefully documented. We did this kind of 3D scans in the process of renovation that helped us to also understand later some things that we wanted to when we wanted to go back to how the space was. And this is the kind of highly referenced model that one of our colleagues, Kola, made, which is kind of here you can see how all of these elements are kind of going through from the process of deconstruction to the moment where we started to install some smart cameras here for the sake of making one of the installations for the Tbilisi Architecture Biennial. I'll talk about that in a bit, but just to explain how this works in a very simple way, each element again is assigned with a unique ID number, and then we can store different information about that element. What is it made of? What is its projected time span, as in lifespan, how many years it's supposed to exist? Maybe some specific things about this object. We can store objects that are static and that just lay on the floor, but we can also inbuilt into this model more active things, like for instance our vacuum cleaner, which runs around the space, sees the space in its weird way because it has a LiDAR scanner, which kind of understands even how furniture moves in the space. And first time we managed to produce something that kind of was the basis for the networked home project was for this case in Milano Triennale. We were invited to participate and show just one of the projects of our practice as an emerging European architecture practice. And we did this kind of visual kind of representation of that situation where we had this kind of big floor plan printed on the sheet of paper, and we've designed a set of cards that kind of help people in a playful way understand what happened to this apartment during the process of renovation. So say we reconstructed the parquet, the existing floor, and that's the practice that many people do. For that, you normally use different kinds of works. For instance, machine grinding, for which you use this kind of big thing that kind of costs certain amount of money per square meter, and certain people do that. And then in order to then finish this work, you also need to buy things like, for instance, varnish, right? And we know what is carbon footprint of this material per kilogram. We know how much we use of that, and we also know how much it costed. So in general, we tried to, instead of making this kind of archi-complex system and dumping it into people's brains, we did something quite playful and simple where we could explain them by the set of cards how these things work and how can they trace the things for themselves. Now we work with, again, with Dark Matter Labs on this kind of long-term project, which has to do with untangling supply chains for one window. We have it here in the office, and it's actually amazingly kind of complex thing if you think about it, especially considering how normalized, how like kind of familiar it is of an object for all of us probably. We started to look at PVC kind of plastic and how it's produced, and this kind of metallic furniture and all different things that compose a window. And, you know, we started to go with the supply chain, kind of looking at the little factory next to Kiev where these things are produced, but then also going further and kind of figuring out that the profiles for the window come there in this kind of 6 meter long sticks with trucks from Germany, where they're produced on the oil kind of oil products recycling factory, and the oil is brought there from Russia, and so on and so forth, to the point where when we see this small little thing of a window that we know how to operate, we know how it works when nothing breaks, we kind of completely forget about all of this kind of crazy scale of things that take part in its production and even kind of active work that it does, because the window also never just stands for itself and does nothing. It, for instance, prohibits cold air from outside to come inside, and it kind of lets sunshine to enter the room. So with this to say, Networked Homes is this project that kind of explores these relationships between materiality and agency. As kind of a bit of a turn from a more normal architectural kind of analysis of how space and actions kind of take place together. So we understand that every material that we have in this space has agency and it does something. At the same time, we understand that the things that are obviously active in the space, they also are done from something, so they have their own materiality. And yeah, the project basically tries to untangle all of these things. The framework that we see things with in the project is basically to say that if every building is this kind of crazy complex network of things that happen to be in the same time and space, what if we could start kind of tracing all of these kinds of relationships that kind of bring them together, and then pointing at those that we consider important. Like, for instance, if we say that we are kind of concerned with the climate issues, let's look at the carbon footprint and stuff. If we want to look at local production of materials, let's look at the percentage of materials that we managed to get here, or at what is possible second life of certain things, and so on. So this is just to say that Networked Homes is a framework, right? At this point, it's a very open-ended project. We've already presented it in a kind of sequence of events where we show different things about the project, and we are very much happy that the Tbilisi Biennial was one of these kinds of events where we could push some of these things forward, and we definitely intend to go more and more forward with these things. This is just to say that what I'm showing you can continue kind of extend the work. So for instance, here are some experiments where we tried to measure humidity, temperature, CO2 and illuminance in the space, and by itself, it's a very useful exercise. I learned that the place where I sleep is way not humid enough and way too hot in the winter, because here we have centralized heating, and you know there are certain issues that come with that. But again, just to say that all of the kind of things that exist in this space, like for instance in this case the gas meter, which connects the kind of the space and the way it works and the temperature in it with sort of again, like more of a state control apparatuses, which kind of send you receipts for electricity and gas every month. So we kind of studied those things, and we started to look at our vacuum cleaner, which you will see in the video in the end, which kind of runs around the space and, as I said, sees it in a certain way, and also like kind of trying to understand some of the things that have to do with data privacy in that regard and so forth. So this is one of the sensors that we use to produce the images I showed you in the beginning. And this is just to say that some of the kind of directions of the project are more exploratory. Some of them are based on the fact that we just like look at different things, that we analyze what they do in the space, and we try to document that in a way that is sometimes more of an aesthetic exploration. So these things we normally show in the events like Tbilisi Architecture Biennale, but we also are deeply interested in these things where this kind of familiar tactile space of home meets the sort of complete kind of machine-like perception of things, starting from vacuum cleaners to image recognition technologies that now are actively being trained to understand what kind of furniture you have inside of your home, what kinds of how expensive it is, such that you would probably be targeted with specific products and so on. So yeah, this is the thing we did for Tbilisi Architecture Biennale exhibition in Ivano-Frankivsk, which is another Ukrainian city. And we just wanted to stream the apartment to the different location. So we installed a set of cameras where inside of the home where kind of some activity would take place. For instance, this is a messy sink that, you know, of course, normally it's perfectly clean, but for the sake of the exhibition, we kept it messy, and, you know, all the dishes would not be washed. So yeah, whenever some activity would occur there, people in Ivano-Frankivsk would see that. And also has to do with our thoughts about how the space can be represented in different ways. But here in Kiev, we also constructed this kind of installation in the Pavilion 13 at VDNG, which is this kind of Soviet Expo Center. It's an amazing modernist pavilion. And what we did was we drawn an exact copy of an apartment. Like I'm sitting right here in the real copy of an apartment. And yeah, we basically showed all of the elements that turned out to be unnecessary after the process of reconstruction. We also tried to analyze their life, how long they served, what is their condition. Basically tried to analyze this kind of material aspect of things. And I will ask colleagues to show you the video where we explore more of a kind of active part of life that then these material ended up kind of making sure that we now have, right? So the activity inside of the both spaces, this pavilion and the home. So if you could please show the video.
Yes, now we will stream the video. Шегулега уж то video.
data.
Okay, I think we are back from the video. And
great. Yeah, just to say a couple of words about that is to make sure that it's clear that at this point we basically used the chance to build this exhibition in the pavilion as a shooting set, and used basically the days of the days when the exhibition was active in the pavilion as a sort of shooting days for ourselves to bring the model there, bring the cat and the vacuum cleaner, and start producing this video, which kind of explores more of a kind of user side of things in all of this conversation. But at the same time, just to say that this is a very kind of raw cut footage, which we produced basically 2 days ago. And the work will continue, and we hope to produce the kind of a more of a well-polished network homes video at some point.
Thank you, Maxim. Thank you for a very interesting presentation and video. I think that it really showcases the project you're working on. I remind everyone that we have around 15 minutes left for question and answers, and you can post your questions on our Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, and we'll be following up that questions. Maxim, to follow up, you have submitted also the web page, prepared the web page for Tbilisi Architecture Biennial, following your work, your research. Can you tell us a little bit more about the web page and what actually it gives to us?
Right. So the kind of 3D space that we created for the Biennale is this kind of virtual space where you can enter and see the 3 states of the apartment, which we presented in this presentation. So if you still can see my screen, these are just floor plans of these scans. But actually, in the link that you probably can find at the website, you can walk around these spaces, right? And you can see how they change. This is just to give you another perspective at these things, and I will be able let you be able to see it with your own eyes.
Great. Just you also mentioned during your presentation that you follow all this life cycle of materials and during the renovation, and you're just looking at the supply chain, like following till the end from oil production. Why do you think it's important to know what this data in the end gives you? Right. And later on, maybe the question continues how you use this data and for what purposes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the stuff I told you about the hacker culture is literally kind of the approach when you first don't necessarily know what you will do with something, But I mean, obviously, the question about sustainability is probably one of the most important kind of discourses in contemporary kind of architecture scene, right? And we all know this kind of, again, like probably everyone already heard this 1,000 times, that buildings are responsible for around half of all the carbon emissions worldwide. So for us, it was rather a question of why do we have no idea when we buy things for the renovation, how kind of damaging for the environment they are. And in that sense, the project was kind of this attempt to just study those things on our own experience, right? Like I buy bags of cement and I want to know how kind of how much carbon emissions it has, but also which countries are the producers, where it comes from, what kind of labor it uses, and so on. So those things are quite hard to trace. And like for instance, in the project with Windows, you can only go that far in terms of especially some of the things that people consider their intellectual property. But for me, it's kind of obvious that it's necessary to look at those things in a way that we all are, especially people who practice architecture and design, are responsible in this kind of choices that kind of affect what kinds of products and materials we use. And at a certain moment, it kind of becomes clear, probably with a bit of a kind of shift in mind, that it also is a responsibility, like choosing those things. We just want to make sure that there are ways to look at those things in a way that is useful for people. So in terms of where this is going, again, with people we kind of collaborate quite a lot, Dark Matter Labs based in London, we are looking at the potential of creating some sort of material registry, which would be a public kind of open to everyone database that would kind of let you figure out how certain products affect the environment. But at the same time, like as I said with the window, it's a bit of a kind of exploration that just comes from natural interest. Like, oh, let's disassemble this and look how many components it has.
Actually, when we are touching this footprint and environmental footprint, I don't think that there is, and we discussed it before we went on live, I don't think that there is too much knowledge about how much footprint actually we make when we, for example, renovate our room. This is from my experience based here in Georgia. How it is in your case, or is it like your project somehow a try to shift, as you said, shift the minds in thinking that way?
Yeah, I mean, I just also to be sure it's clear that it's not necessarily the central focus of the whole project. Where we started was this component, but sure. I mean, I don't think even in Western countries there's like people necessarily understand. Like if I would tell you that you need to choose a window based on the fact whether it's a plastic one, aluminum one, or a wooden one, I don't necessarily think that most of people would guess which ones are more kind of have more embodied carbon than others, which means the kind of carbon necessary to produce the element. So, but at the same time, we see that things are moving towards that, right? Like. It will be more and more necessary to, hopefully with more regulation, to kind of consider those things. And as with most of projects that we do at CST, we try to think in advance. We try to see what are the kind of components of the infrastructure that we need in the future to build the cities that we want to see. And we kind of design for those cities rather than for the contemporary demands of the market.
Good. I'm looking at. We don't still have any questions from the audience. You have presented the project in Ivano-Frankivsk, as I see, and also in Kiev.
Right.
You're preparing for another exhibition?
Sure. Yeah. We will also show this project in Dnipropetrovsk, which is another Ukrainian city. Yeah, it's exciting to be able to share the work that we have with different people in different cities, in the sense that I don't know, like it seems like we've already done, like dozens of exhibitions within the office, in a sense that the amount of material we have and also the sort of the amount of things that we want to explore within this project is kind of endless. So it's definitely exciting to work on that one. And oh my God, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Maxim, why did you choose the name for the project Network at Homes?
Well, yeah, I mean, as this kind of slide in the presentation says, it also is a reference to Bruno Latour's kind of actor network theory stuff. It kind of comes from this attempt to look at all the networks that kind of connect physical things, but also some of the activity that we have within the space. And yeah, we try to basically look at the things that are meaningful, right? So everything is connected with everything. We know that, but the kind of the material trajectories that kind of seem to matter is what we're looking for in these things. And in that sense, networked homes are the kinds of the field of studies where we search for those, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you for the explanation. I think that's crystal clear. Maxim, we don't have any questions coming up from the audience. I would like to thank you very much for your time to be here today. I really appreciate your work, which is already online on our webpage. So any interesting person could go on our webpage, Biennial and experience actually your project. I thank you once again and the whole your team, and I really hope that in the near future we'll have this opportunity to collaborate in physical space.
Sure, sounds good. And thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yes, cheers.
Bye.